Welcome, everyone. This is another CK workshop brought to you by the notorious Craig Wadding. He has been making a very proliferate name for himself here in the community, constantly giving back, constantly teaching people how to start from zero. You know, you're always going to be able to build the things that you want to see, and Craig is going to be your gatekeeper in this conquest. So Craig has done the very honorable thing of stepping in for Mia tonight, because Mia is actually kind of sick. Unfortunately, she got the flu today. But, you know, Craig, being the great guy that he is like, I got this. So last week, actually 2 weeks ago, he did a similar thing where he kind of worked on an HTML CSS portion of that led up to the JavaScript portion. Today's going to be a little different, but yeah, Craig, do you want to tell us what we got upcoming today?
Yeah, so I know typically Mia, I believe her workshop, she usually does like, you know, create your first website. I think last week she did create your first blog, I think, right?
Right.
I didn't have a ton of time. I had to work today and then trying to get something together. But what I want to go over, hopefully you guys will get something out of it, is using forms in HTML. So like if you're making a web page and you want to have somewhere where people can input things, you know, name, address, phone number, email, even different selectors, radio buttons, drop-down menus, stuff like that. Something you might use in a web page or blog or something like that. Maybe go into showing you how to put some of that stuff together, show some examples of that, and then maybe in a later workshop, maybe in the JavaScript workshop, we can talk about how to pull that information that you get from the forms to pull it into, use it for JavaScript, maybe to store it into variables or store it in a file by itself where that information can go to, and kind of grow build off of that. But for tonight, I was just going to kind of give some examples of how to do that. So if you're working on a page and you want to include something there for just, I don't know, like if you wanted someone to leave reviews or leave their information or sign up like for a mailing list or something like that. I thought that might be kind of cool to go over.
Yeah. So yeah, there's always going to be constant interfaces with, you know, all sorts of, you know, websites that you come across. You'll want to input some information. This is very like fundamental and valuable, like super universal thing that you can build. And for those of you that are on this call for the first time, this is going to be very different from a just regular tutorial. You actually have someone that is actively going through this step by step with you all and kind of explaining, you know, the reasons why, like he's making the decisions that he's making, or how you should think about it as you're going along. So if you all get at all confused or you have any questions while he's walking through it, it's going to be you know, paramount that you stop him, because if you have any questions, odds are someone else in this call also has questions. So be you know, very proactive with, you know, the time allotted that you guys have here. Craig's a valuable, super valuable resource. And we actually also have Paul here who can chime in as well. He has vast experience with, you know, software and all of the development side. So with that, Craig, I think that you can go ahead and just start like sharing your screen. We can get this started.
Cool. Let me move some stuff around 1 second. All right, cool. Can you see my Visual Studio Code here?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Now, I was fighting this last time. I still don't think I've got it figured out. Let me see if I can get my...
Also, side note for the people that are on this call is when Craig is sharing his screen, the chat actually hides. So it's best if you have a question to go ahead and unmute yourself and then just ask him as he's walking through it.
Okay. Now, can you see both of these?
Yeah, we can see both sides this time.
Okay. So I finally got it figured out, I guess. Excellent. So basically, all this is so far is just one file. It's an HTML file. This is just a typical boilerplate that I put in inside of the body tags. So between this tag and the closing tag for body, I made another tag called form. Actually, I can just, let me just back up here. So if you inside the body tag, give yourself a little bit of room, but if you just create a form tag, and depending on which code editor you're using, like this one, see how it creates when I created the opening tag, it automatically made the closing tag. Inside of there, I'm just gonna paste that back in. There's several different input types that you can use. I'm just gonna start from scratch here. So when you do an input tag, it doesn't have a closing tag. So there's just input, but inside of the tag itself, you can do the type, and you see how my Visual Studio Code is, I typed the word type, this little shortcut come up. All it does is add the equal sign and the quotation marks. But inside of there, you could even see how I could select these different tags that my Visual Studio Code is already telling me, right? There's tons of different kind of input types that you can use. And we're going to go over some of those tonight, just to get you an idea, if you're trying to make a form, which ones you could use. So for this first one, we're just going to use text. And then, whoops, sorry. It's wanting to. Just the fun stuff that happens when other people are trying to watch you type, guys. Yeah, you want to give it different attributes. Like here, we're going to just give it a name. We're just going to call it, this one here, we're just going to call name. And then you can also do a placeholder. And I'll show you here in a second what all this does. So placeholder, we're going to put type your name here. Save that. Let me refresh this over here. So basically with the HTML, by me using the form tags inside of the form, I put one input here already. So input type text. I'm just calling it name. Placeholder, type your name here. So inside, if you can see over here, this is our little text input. This is a placeholder, type your name here. So as I start typing, that disappears. It's just there for the ability to give somebody direction of what you want them to do in that input without having to add more text or other things on there. So we could do another one here. I'm just going to copy and paste this line. And this one here, we could do, let's see another type of input we could use. I think we can use email. Call this one email. So we have another one here, placeholder for your email. I'm just going to add a couple more of these and we'll just play around with a couple different types that we have. radio is for radio buttons. This one, let's see, we don't need a placeholder. We can name this choice 1. And let's see. Choice 2. But what we want to do is, let's see, try to remember how to do this. We want to give these both a value. And we could call it like, I don't know. We'll just do the gender thing. See if I did that right. Nope. No, I didn't. I didn't do it right. Hang on a second. I might have done that backwards. If you do these correctly, basically it gives you options, multiple options. And this way only one button can be engaged at the same time. So give me a second here. Input type radio, gender value. I did something wrong, folks. Hang on a second. I said I just kind of threw this together before we started, so forgive me for not being like in practice of doing this. What am I doing wrong?
Still got that second input of type text.
What's that?
Your second input still of type text.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Because I copy and pasted it and I never changed it. Okay, we're getting there. Name, value. What did I mess up here? Oh, that's right. That part's right. Give them both the same name, but different values. So they should both show up, but where is my text? Where's my text at? But type equals radio, name equals gender.
You're not going to have labels on these unless you put labels.
Well, should I have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No, it's forgetting something.
Or you could use like label for, and then pass the ID of the input. It'll just link the labels with the input controls.
Okay. We could also do other, I guess, to be PC here, right? It'll be radio. And then the same thing. So they share the name attribute because it's still going to be under gender. And then the value of other. And then we could also set this for default. So if they don't pick one of the others, it's going to be, or male or female, it's going to be other by default. All right. Okay, what else? What else do we want to do? There's a bunch of them. Which one is the drop down? Is that I know there's a date time. Let's do that one. Okay, so date. No, there's one of them that's got a little calendar. Which one was that? Was it date time local? Thinking out loud here, folks. Date. There we go. Okay. So there's date. So you see how when it's with the date, it has the format for month, day, year, and then there's even a drop down with a calendar. There's also a way, and I don't know it offhand, that you could set that to where it's got like a governor on it. So this calendar will only go back so far. But I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, that's all built right into that input type. So if you're wanting to do it on a form where someone puts in an actual date for whatever reason, whether it's a birthday or the date they're, if they want to put a date stamp on when they're submitting it or whatever. I mean, you could use it for all kind of stuff. What else we got? I know Paul's still here. Is anybody else still here?
Right here, Craig. Right.
Okay.
Here. I'm here. Yeah, we got a ton of people here. I guess they're just
in awe. They're in awe of my awesomeness, how smoothly I do this.
Absolutely.
Oh boy.
We got here.
Yep. And I'm not sure with the submit. I don't think you need a value on submit.
You do if you want to populate like the words on it.
Okay. So like right now it doesn't do anything, but let's say you were going to ask for somebody's name, their email, male or female, and I don't know, whatever their birthday, right? But getting the submit to do something when you click it, like for it to go somewhere, for it to store somewhere, whether it's like a PHP file or JavaScript, maybe you set that up to where name is a variable, email address is a variable, gender is a variable, date is a variable, to where when you submit, it would store that. And I think that's something you have to do inside of the form, like a form, is it action? And then in here, you can let it know what file to direct that to. Does that sound correct, Paul? Or do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah.
I think that's...
If not, it'll just post to the page that you're on. So if you were to click that submit, it's just going to reload the page.
Okay. So that, like I said, that's kind of for another, I think maybe we can toy around with that in the JavaScript workshop as far as like, okay, so we made this little input, this form for inputs. Now let's see where we can store that and how we can use that, those inputs as variables into some JavaScript functions, right? Like the Mad Libs, for example, we were talking about last week in the JavaScript workshop, where maybe you can ask for someone to submit the examples of what you're asking for Mad Libs, like your name, adjectives, verbs, all the different things you ask, and then maybe it could submit it into like an array, or each one into variables, and then output your variables with the JavaScript to return everything you submitted into that paragraph, concatenated with the rest. Like I said, we're going to work on that more in JavaScript tomorrow. If you guys attend that, also going to kind of carry that plan on. But I just wanted to go over some more of these different input types, depending on what you might be making, things that are just going to be handy. So let's see what else we got. What about URL? What is that going to do? Is this, I'm trying to remember, is this where you can actually store a link for this in here? No.
What was that?
For the URL type. Let me save it, just see. I'm trying to remember if that was, you could input if it asks you like for your to enter like your GitHub or your website or something like that. That just where you would type your just input for it. Please enter a URL. Interesting. So does it want an HTTP? Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. It took it. It disappeared into the neverlandness, probably with the socks you're missing and the keychain from high school that you lost. What else is there? There's password. And when you use password, isn't that where you use either get or post, depending on for security? Kind of maybe asking myself here.
What's the question?
When you use the input password type input, doesn't that isn't there a way that you can make it to where when you put in the password, it hides the characters? You know, when you type in your password and it's like asterisks instead of
yeah, it's going to do that by default.
Does it?
That's just what the password field does. Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought, but I didn't want to. So here, if you type in here, yeah, there we go. Beautiful.
Cool.
Cool. So now, obviously, this is HTML. It is inside of this form, inside of these form tags, but we could make a CSS file, and as far as the placement of these boxes, where they're at, other tags, I'm guessing we could check out these types of inputs for whatever. Oh, hey, look. Wow, I didn't see that coming. But I mean, we could do CSS on the other HTML we do. We could do CSS selectors. I'm trying to remember. I think we could even specify each of these inside of the form if we wanted like the boxes to be different sizes or how we wanted to order them. I don't know. But my purpose for even showing this and doing this tonight is if you're making a website and you're typically using HTML and you're using CSS, but you want to include things like this, there's a lot of stuff that's pre-built into these elements already, right? So just by us changing like date, submit, URL, password, radio, text, email, etc., this is all pre-designed. Even like with the placeholder, putting placeholder text in there for that. That's all stuff that's already built into this. So you could see that even if you're a beginner, I guess that was my purpose in even talking about this tonight was even if you're a beginner, you see how kind of simple it is to add all this stuff to a website as long as you know how to use it, right? I think we can even do, instead of using input, we can do text area. Let's see, call this like leave message or something. Text area doesn't need placeholder. Let's see. But the text area does need a closing tag. Whoops. Oops. Sorry. I left something out, didn't I? Because I'm getting screamed at. That red text doesn't like it.
Yeah, you're just missing the closing bracket after the last quote before the left side. Yeah, you're like missing the greater like the greater than alligator after the quote in here. Like, please leave your comments here, quote, then the closing.
Oh, for the first one. Yeah. Whoops. Alligator.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Term.
No, I like it. It's good. So how do you tell one alligator from the other? Like the alligator that's going away and the one that's coming towards you, or how do?
Yeah, so like the greater than less than. So if you've got a number on the left and then a number on the right, which one would you throw in the middle? Well, the greater than would say that the number on the left is greater than. Less than would be one going the other way. Number on the left is less than.
I always thought of it as it points at the lower number, or it points at the lesser thing. You know, like the little arrow thing, or the little mouth opens up. I guess the alligator would go toward the biggest thing then.
Yeah.
See, we all learned something new. Does everybody feel like they've learned something new? I did not know that. But this text area thing basically made this little text window over here. Wow, look. Why is all that there? Code injected by live server. That's pretty cool. Oh boy. There we go. I don't know. Maybe live server did that when I had it wrong. And then after I fixed it, then I refreshed it. But so see, here is your placeholder text. Please leave your comments here. And you could actually type whatever in there, submit. So cool. So 8:33 with 27 minutes to spare. Look at that. Got all that stuff typed out.
Nice.
Let's I guess let's talk about it. Is anybody who's watching this previously attempted to do anything with HTML and CSS besides just like a static page? Like, if you ever tried to make anything interactive or anything other than just like putting text and pictures and changing the color and stuff like that?
Feel free to unmute yourselves too when you
Yeah.
chime in.
Yeah, not for multiple years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has anybody had to create forms for like a Bootcamp assessment? Like, some of them send you like an assessment course and you have to replicate or do mock-ups and stuff. Has anybody done that one for, I think App Academy has one, or General Assembly, one of those? They send you like a mock-up and you have to recreate. There's like a card where there's a picture and then there's a person's picture and you have to make it to a circle and use like CSS Grid Flex.
That's a part of the prep course?
Yeah, one of the boot camps has a little assessment course they send you, and it's got like instructions for it. I was helping somebody figure out some of it a couple weeks ago, and I think it's which is the school that if you finish the assessment, the ISA, you're qualified for the ISA regardless. They don't do it's either App Academy or General Assembly, one of those two.
Yeah, I should know these.
I should know too. I always get those two mixed up. But if you are trying to get into boot camp and you were unable to get an ISA for whatever reason, lack of credit or whatever, there is the one school that if you can pass the assessment they send you, they will approve you for the ISA regardless. Like, even if you don't have credit, they will take a leap of faith with you because you can do that. If anybody's interested in that, let me know and I will find out exactly which school we're talking about, and let you know if there's anybody that's struggling because of not being able to get an ISA to go to school. Let me know. Does anybody know of any other inputs or any other HTML stuff that we could also talk about or go over that you're aware of that we could add to this?
Yeah, or anything that you guys can map out to something that you want to work on for your own personal projects. This is always a good time to go ahead and like ask those questions.
Yeah. And like I said, I only knew a couple hours ago that I was filling in for Mia. So I just was trying to find something to bring to the table to show you guys if the interest is in HTML, websites, things like that. I just thought, what would be a good thing other than the usual, to talk about that you guys might need, right? So if you're doing a blog or something. Do you know if those schools have data science? I think so, Lauren. I'm pretty sure if we're talking about App Academy, data science, General Assembly has data science. App Academy only has software engineering that I'm aware of. But General Assembly, I think it would be full-time, but General Assembly has full-time software engineering, data science, and UX design. But I'll figure out. If anybody's struggling to get an ISA approved, let me know. I'll find out what that school is, so at least you have an opportunity. One more.
Also, everyone, you guys notice how Craig walked through this, and already he has like this whole form like nicely made and like formatted on like this HTML or website page. Like it's up, it's like functional, it's looking good. It's like very, really not difficult.
It's very generic looking because we haven't tied any HTML to it. But obviously, if you've done HTML, CSS, if you've been learning CSS, you know that that's all generic HTML stuff, right? So, background color, text color, font size, font style, borders, where it's placed on the screen, whether you use flex or grid or whatever, you can manipulate that stuff. So just imagine you have a little website you're making for your local, I don't know, bakery, and you go to their website, it's got pictures of the stuff they make, and it's got a little paragraph and a bio about the bakery and all the different stuff. And then down at the bottom, it says, join our mailing list for coupons and specials, whatever, right? And you can put in your name, your address, or your email, birthday. You could leave comments, leave a review, whatever. So, Lauren, Springboard, I know Colt Steele is affiliated with them. I think he's did some of their coursework. I don't know, is that his actual boot camp? I know he was going to be starting his own actual camp. Is that it? Or is that just, he's just one of the contributors to the coursework? Lauren, you're having an issue trying to find background stuff like Mia's, not here stars, but code like it, but different. Not sure what I'm looking for online. What do you mean, like background images or background animation stuff, like stuff that moves? Oh, Lauren, I knew he was doing one. I just didn't know. I thought on Springboard's website, I thought it said he was a contributor. I didn't know if that was actually his. I know he was talking about doing his own. It's like 10 grand or something. Stuff that moves. Lauren, there's some animations you can do with CSS. Typically it's easier, I think, to hang on, somebody.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it. Cool.
Wow, dog.
Yeah, if you guys can hear the dogs, I'm sorry. Apparently my brother.
There was dogs in Tiffany's background, I think.
Oh, they're my brother, my sister's recently ex-husband only seems to show up when I'm streaming live. He'll show up. It's like, I don't know.
Nice.
Maybe he just knows, and then the dogs go crazy because it seems like whenever he stops by for something, it's always when I'm live streaming.
That's funny.
Oh, you're talking about the dog on the desktop?
Oh, there's one there too. Look at that. Yeah.
That's not my dog, but it looks a lot like him. Okay. So something else I did here is everybody familiar with Live Server, using Visual Studio Code Live Server? See what I'm doing here?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Nope.
There is an extension you can get for Visual Studio Code. It is called Live Server. And if you're looking for it, if you look through the extensions, it's this purple, like Wi-Fi looking symbol. Basically, if you...
Huh?
I think you cut off a little bit right there, Craig. Uh-oh. I think he's frozen a little bit. Let's see.
You have... I have a driver problem on my computer. I still have yet to figure out what it is, and it just freezes me up like 4 seconds every once in a while. It's driving me nuts. So Live Server extension for Visual Studio Code, this right here.
Mm-hmm.
If you install that, as an extension on Visual Studio Code. Then if you go to any of your HTML files, like I'll close this little thing out here.
Okay.
You can do one of many things. You can right click the file over here and open with live server, or you can go down at the bottom where it says go live, or you can even right click the screen and open with live server. And you can also do Alt L or and Alt 0, or on a Mac, I guess it would be, what is that? Also Alt on a Mac? Anyway, there's plenty of ways to open it. All you do is just open it, open with live server. It's going to open up a browser, which for me, it opened up on my other screen. Move it over here. And that browser is a live, that port will open up in a browser. So everything you do while you're coding, as you save it and refresh it, it'll show up over here for you. So it's your own little live screen.
So you can check your work and you can see everything, learn it.
Yep. Awesome. Hopefully, I recommend everybody use it. If you do, if you watch a walkthrough, video walkthroughs and stuff like that, a lot of times you'll see different people using them. Sorry. Or you'll see them be like, okay, we're going to open up live server, and they don't always explain what it is. But if you're using Visual Studio Code, which I personally love using, one bit of free advice though, if you get Visual Studio Code and you go to download some extensions, try to research what extensions you put on there first, because if not, you're just like a kid in a candy store with a blank check. You just start installing all these extensions and you don't even know what half of them mean just because they look cool. And then later you've got all this weird stuff going on your screen. I will tell you of a couple that are pretty handy if you guys don't know about them or haven't used them. Brackets. Bracket pair colorization. This is kind of cool. When you're using parentheses and curly brackets and stuff like that, it will match the colors. So you can kind of tell where one starts and one closes. Yeah. That's kind of nice.
Good thing to have.
Yeah, so that's a good one. There's just so many. There's got to be 100,000 different extensions. People make them all the time. I do Ruby and Rails, and some other stuff for school. So there's some extensions that are particular just for, like for Ruby or for JavaScript, or for HTML. If you just type in HTML, CSS, there's just tons of them. But I would say almost Google it first, see which ones are recommended, then come back and find them and install them to use them. Like see somebody else using them and why they're using them. Otherwise, if you get too many on there, they can conflict with one another too, I believe. So anyway.
Kind of like normal mods.
What's that?
It's kind of like how mods with certain games and all that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're adding extensions on there for it to highlight or manipulate or do a certain thing. And then obviously if you've used Visual Studio Code, you can install other colors, like color packages, like for the text in the background and all that kind of stuff. And then here's another thing. If you're learning to code, whether you're in school yet or not going to school or self-learning or whatever, if you're using Visual Studio Code and somebody else uses Visual Studio Code and you want to pair program together, you can even do a live share, not to be confused with live server, but there's also a live share extension right here. And you can invite other people. You can sign in through your GitHub or Microsoft, but you can invite other people and then you can both be coding on your editor at the same time. So like if you were talking to somebody and you were wanting to help them with code or you're working on something together, you could both be on the same exact screen. They could be sharing and connected to your Visual Studio Code by using that. So just as a little heads up. There's other shortcuts you can do here where you can connect to your like GitHub, and you can update and push updates right through the controls over here. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't remember how to do it off the top of my head, and I'm not going to fumble through it in front of everybody. But there's plenty of stuff online you can find on it too. So does anyone think this is stuff you will be using or will try to use, or is anybody going to attempt to play around and work on these input types for practice, just so you know them? Yeah, Cedric, Visual Studio Code is free, and don't get it mixed up. There's a Visual Studio and there's Visual Studio Code. You want Visual Studio Code.
That's unfortunate.
What's that?
That's unfortunate.
That it's free?
No, that they're so similar that people will be like,
Visual Studio, I think, was the original, and there are some uses for it, but I think what most people use now for general use is VSC or VS Code. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, and they said Visual Studio was really good for something. I can't remember if it was Java or I can't remember what it was.
Do you know anything about Microsoft Azure or Azure? I don't know.
Azure.
Yeah, thank you.
Isn't that what you dip your roast beef sandwich in?
Hilarious.
Is that? Oh, that's Azure. I'm sorry.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. Sorry. I hope it's not what's going around. Excuse me. But Paul, do you know more about that? I know a little bit about it, but I'm not gonna try.
Yeah. What's the question regarding it, though? I mean, yes, I know about it.
Sorry. One of the companies didn't actually have is Microsoft. And I talked to a friend of mine. They were telling me, like, because I've been looking into like outside of like some of the languages to learn, like SQL and Python, and also while learning like HTML mainly right now, just to get my basics so I can understand those later on. But someone told me that Microsoft moved away from SQL moved away from SQL all the way now to Azure only.
That doesn't quite make sense because they're two different things. So Azure is their cloud infrastructure, cloud offering that would be comparable to AWS or Google's compute cloud. And where SQL's going to be is just a language for interacting with databases.
Okay.
And so in Azure, you can run whatever you want. It's just a cloud offering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. They had just told me about that. I was kind of wondering. I was like, okay. I didn't want to ask someone who actually popped.
I was going to say there's several different Microsoft certification things you can get too, right? Like some companies, ask if you have history with certain Microsoft certifications.
Okay.
Isn't Azure? Isn't there some kind of certification for that too, or something? I don't know. You
Microsoft
probably look
likes
it up.
to offer a certification for everything.
For everything.
Whether they're worth anything is debatable.
I wonder, since Microsoft made Visual Studio Code, I wonder if there's a Visual Studio Code certification.
Probably.
I wonder if I should get that.
Probably.
It might help for these. It might help for these workshops.
Here, I'll make you one. It makes you feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Photoshop. Just make me a little certificate. Craig is completed. Craig Wadding. Or Craig Wadding, as Melvin likes to call me.
Is it not?
It's just wadding, like wadding up a piece of paper. I know it sounds terribly.
How's that any different from how I say it?
I think you called me wadding. There's a couple extra H's in there. I don't know. It's okay.
That's
Trust me,
hilarious.
I'm 47. If I had $1 for every time somebody said my last name wrong, I would not need to be here right now. I'd be on my
Hey,
boat.
I got a friend named Rich Words. He's told me, like, I've had all of them. If he can
Oh,
come up
yeah.
with something he hasn't heard, he's like, if you come up with something I
Well,
haven't heard yet, I'll pay you $100.
Apparently, 200 years ago it was Waddington, but somebody didn't want to sound like they just came from England right after, we just had a war with them. So,
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
it's like, 1776, a couple years later, like, hey, here we are. And no, we're from nowhere land and we're not from that
Yeah.
place. Yeah, so something
Makes
like
sense.
that. Yeah.
All right. So does anyone else have questions about the workshop tonight or feedback about how?
With the forms, so that's the way you can create forms for like your basic HTML web page, and then you can use CSS to actually enhance that, like make it look different,
Make it
look
pretty.
special.
Yeah. And then what I'm going to try to do, if God help me if I have time between now and tomorrow before the JavaScript workshop, is I'm going to make like a form where it's going to be like, enter your name, enter this, enter that, and then try to get that stored try to connect that with some JavaScript so that I can make the JavaScript piece it all together for me and then put my Mad Lib together.
So
Sorry,
go on.
The Mad Lib basically is like an old game, right? Where you ask somebody certain questions and then you take the answers and then you plug them into like a paragraph, like a funny story.
Yeah.
Like, what's your name? What's your favorite color? Whatever. And then it's like, Melvin bought a purple giraffe and whatever, it takes certain type of words and then plugs them in to make it a funny little story. But I just thought that would be a good practice for us to work on with JavaScript on how to take in data, store it, output it where we want it to be, So these forms, when I was looking at stuff for forms, I just thought maybe we can incorporate what we were talking about tonight with something with the JavaScript and be able to send that information somewhere once it's inputted and submitted, right? And then output a return of a paragraph with all that information built into it.
Okay. So, because I was wondering, like, with that, which is easier when you comes to making like websites? Is it JavaScript or HTML, or is it just like just because the languages are different and what you're learning is different? Just maybe on a practicality basis. If I'm right in what I'm saying.
The thing is, I think where a lot of people get, and this is totally my opinion, I think where a lot of people get confused or lost when you're beginning.
Yeah.
There are certain things that are broken down into the simplest form because they're trying to teach you the fundamentals of the building blocks of how stuff works. Yeah. And I think as you get more experience and as you graduate into more things, there are like libraries and frameworks and other things out there that were created specifically to be a shortcut of pre-made packaged stuff. That as you learn them, you start using them and you get away from, like, a lot of your tutorials you'll see where there's HTML and then they're doing like inline CSS and inline JavaScript where it's all packed into one file. Mm-hmm. And eventually it's like, oh yeah, you don't do that now. You make a separate file for your CSS and you import it to your HTML. You make a separate file for your JavaScript because some of these programs you might have, literally dozens of folders with hundreds of different files all in one gigantic program. I think was Paul was talking about last week or something, somebody saw something that was like 1,500 lines of code and he was like laughing, like, you think 1,500 lines of code's a lot, so there's stuff out there that's prepackaged where you'll install things and you'll go to build something and you might have whole left side of your screen on VS Code has all these different files and folders, and some of them you're never going to touch. You're not going in. They're there for a reason. but they're part of a bundle or something you pre-package that you're going to use them, but you don't have to touch them. They're already just there. I guess you'll see more what I'm talking about eventually, but some of the very, very basic fundamentals you're doing, you won't have to do later, but some of the stuff we'll always be doing, if that makes any sense, in my opinion.
That does. It makes sense. It just makes sense as much as it can right now because I'm still beginning.
Yeah. So otherwise, any questions? Sorry guys, if this was a little light for what Mia typically does, but I hopefully on short notice, it was somewhat informative, I hope.
No, this is great. Craig, thank you again for like filling in with such short notice. Unfortunately, Mia just woke up like super late because she's like super sick, and hopefully she like gets better. But I always love how I'm like able to count on you. So personally, thank you so much.
It's okay, man. Just that just slide that extra $100 in the mail. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I got you.
No, I don't mind helping out, and I same thing with tomorrow night. I just do the best I can. I'm just here to help. I'm not a professor. I'm just part of the community, just trying to help out. And I think these workshops are great too, no matter who's doing them, just to have people have a reason to have the meeting, almost even like a squad meeting kind of thing, but gets people sharing ideas and experience and asking questions, answering questions. I think anything positive in the right direction, no matter how simple it is, I think is always a good thing. And I think we should do as many of them as we can, as often as we can.
Yeah, I agree. We have a lot of really awesome events each week. Like tomorrow, for the people that don't know yet, Craig's hosting his JavaScript workshop. And then the night after, we'll have the VP of Admissions of Kenzie Academy on for a special guest interview or an AMA where you guys can all ask her questions. The week after, we'll have a tech lead from Asana. So we have a lot of things coming up down the pipeline. What's your dog's name?
Yager.
All right. Can Yager log us out? Can Yager speak or something? Or like
his I'm gonna have to do it because his arms aren't long enough to reach the mouse.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And again, be sure to check out that mindset discussion. I think there's going to be a lot of really cool, things that could just empower you. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, like always, we'll be here tomorrow night and most nights on these weekends or weeks. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Craig. Are y'all recording tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm going to miss it because I don't get off till 10 o'clock.
Tomorrow we split it in two sections. The first hour for beginners, second hour for more advanced. I record them separately. So when people go to watch them on YouTube, they can differentiate the two.
Okay, because I don't get off till like after 10. So I'm sad I'm going to miss it.
No problem. It'll be,
all right,
it'll be up on YouTube in a couple days. So.
All right, night.
All right, bye.
Good night.